Welcome back to another episode of CloseMode, the Enterprise Sales Show. I'm Brian Dietmeyer, CEO of Close Strong. And today, we're all lucky to have Amir Assar here. Amir is the VP of Sales of Denodo, who's a data management platform. And welcome to the show, Amir.
Thank you, Brian. I'm pleased to be here.
So last week, we were talking about selling. And you mentioned situational awareness being a key skill for sellers, and it caught my ear. So today, that's what we're going to talk about. So at a high level, how would you define that for sellers? It's funny. I went and did a little research on it, and I get the sense that when I think of situational awareness, it's just knowing what's going on around you. But it's more than that, right?
Yeah, absolutely, Brian. You know, this is really a topic I'm passionate about because as many other topics around sales, good salespeople already do this. So this is not some novel concept or something,
Right.
something brand new that someone thought of. Everyone has been doing this. Maybe they haven't been able to sort of put a framework around it. But the term, quote unquote, situational awareness, or what the military calls SA, has been a term popularized probably in the last 20, 30 years. But, it really means developing and maintaining as close to perfect knowledge as possible around surroundings. So, like you said, what's going on around you, but that's just the tip of it.
Yes.
Really, then the question is what you do with it. So then what you would do by being aware of what's going around you, you would identify the unique patterns of a scenario or a series of scenarios and pattern match that to past experiences. For example, if this and this and this happens, I think I now realize what I should do. And what's really important with situational awareness is, once you take everything into account, you really adjust your behavior, right? This is the key thing. I mean, situational awareness has what I think of a future tense application. You effectively sort of extrapolate the best course of action and position yourself, your team, your sales cycle for future success. And as a good seller, as you sort of realize what's going around you, you constantly fine tune, and sometimes you may even completely change direction, and then aggressively act on the knowledge you've gained. And I can certainly give you some real life examples of this as well, if you'd like.
Oh yeah, I really think those are helpful. Yes.
Yeah. So in fact, I'm going to not mention customer names or even sellers' last names to protect the innocent, but these are real things, and I can even get you the customer and the seller involved. And this is just in the last sort of 2-3 years, things jump to mind. But we're all sellers, right? So ultimately, we want to close a deal and make it bigger. I'll give you a perfect example of situational awareness in a sales cycle that really literally made, not only were we successful, but it ended up the deal being really 5 times literally as large as it could have been. This was sometime last year. This is a Fortune 50 customer, so certainly one of the top 50 corporations in North America. And this was in the sort of data and analytics realm. And we, our sellers sort of did the usual thing. You need to do a discovery call, find out what the customer needs, and then you go and do a demo or presentation based on the discovery. Really, sort of very standard. But here's where, and this particular seller just does situational awareness so intuitively. It's just one of those people that just naturally does that. So, she's constantly reading the room. She's asking sort of questions to know what's happening around. So now this was a combination of in-person meeting and Zoom, but basically sort of to get to the ending of the story. What in the very beginning, in fact, the sponsor had allocated the budget. These are real figures of about $250,000 annual contract value, right, over a couple of years. But this was a $250K ACV deal. And the very beginning, in the discovery call, the customer said, "Yeah, this is what it is, and this is I'm going to get the budget." So all the good discovery stuff. So over the course of maybe 2 Zoom meetings, and a an actual customer meeting, my rep was sort of got to know some of the other folks, and during one of these meetings, she got to know the head of compliance, who we thought wasn't even a main. Actually, the person wasn't even a main decision maker. It was just someone who would benefit, sort of, like on the side.
Yeah.
Wasn't part of the project. And then as she got into it, she realized that our champion who initially brought us in, had trouble getting more budget and decided to take a sort of a smaller deal. So she, some challenge in him, but she also sensed that sort of compliance was a bigger issue than just analytics for
Mm.
them. So she then talked to the compliance team on their own, and in a series of conversations, she kind of had the she completely turned things around and convinced the compliance team that they could get a tremendous amount of value out of this,
Yeah.
and then coached the head of compliance to go back to her original champion and say, look, we need to make this a lot bigger to sort of handle our compliance needs, not just analytics. So, to make a long story short, this ended up being a deal over seven figures, or a deal of just a tad over $1 million ACV, as opposed to a fourth of it, just because. And this wasn't just a single meeting; it was a series of meetings where she realized, that this compliance person, he's being dragged into this because he kind of needs to nod, but in reality, he's got some big problems, and she
Yeah.
completely switched. She actually went and got somebody in our company that knows all about compliance, talked to him, almost started a parallel sell cycle with him, and then brought the two together. So, and I'm sure a lot of sellers that are listening to this are like, oh my God, that's, I've done this before, but this is a
Right.
perfect example of a situational awareness, not just in a single meeting, but across a couple of different meetings, understanding the budget constraints of the original champion, understanding that compliance is actually a bigger deal, especially as she kind of uncovered it, bringing it all together. So I wanted to just give you a real life example of in the not so distant past of what situational awareness really can mean in a practical term. Now, and we can sort of get into a little bit more of what happens when someone doesn't have situational awareness, but in the best case scenario, had our rep not been aware of the situation, the best case scenario, we would have come in, been on equal footing with a whole bunch of other vendors, and maybe had a shot of closing a 250K annual contract value. That
Yeah.
probably would have been the best. And then we would have said, oh, great job, great job, great job. Yeah, we beat so and so competitors. But in reality, by the time we bought the compliance team, we didn't even have any competitors, right? Because you just changed the game. So, that's just a perfect, and I can take the next hour, example after examples of
Yeah.
similar things like this.
Yeah, it's interesting as you're talking through that. I'm a big mindfulness fan, and a big piece of mindfulness is being present and being present across many situations in order to see patterns and make better decisions in the future. So it's the correlation there is kind of cool to me. So one of the things we talked about on the last call was slowing down to hurry up and how
Mm.
situational awareness can help you decide when to do that. So can you expound on that a little bit?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, in fact, one of the I think so. So one of the biggest mistakes uh, folks make, and especially now. Now, mind you, we're talking about enterprise software sales, right? These are things anywhere from $50,000 of annual contract value to millions of dollars of annual contract value. This isn't things that people buy on a whim. You're not you're not buying a pair of shoes in a store. So one of the biggest mistakes reps make is they just feel like they have to make their point as soon as possible, because it's like they think it's a 100-meter dash. The sooner you get to the end line, the quicker you're going to close it, and your competitors aren't going to win. What they don't realize is you really have to. In fact, I always tell people sort of uh, slow it down, and I'll give you a couple of examples. So, people, I've had reps ask me, well, hey, I had a 30-minute discovery call. So how do I apply situational awareness? And the first thing I say, well, I mean, 30-minute discovery call with just one individual at a particular prospect, that's not enough. So instead of hurrying up to go do our presentation, let's slow it down. Let's ask for another discovery meeting. Let's ask for a discovery meeting with more people on the on the board of our prospect. And the rep may say, yeah, but that's going to give a chance for our competition to go present before us. We're like, fine, let them do that. If we extend the discovery, extend it to more people, then we'll understand the needs of the customer. We'll understand the organizational nuances. We'll understand the group dynamics better. And this is one of the things that I always say. And look, I'm not saying you should sort of extend your sell cycle just for the sake of it. But again, that's part of being aware. Sometimes you just have a sense of, it's I'm rushing through this, and all I'm going to do is one of my old managers used to say, show up and throw up. Oh, here's what our product does: features and functions,
Yeah.
price. Do you want to buy it? And that's that almost never invariably works. And the more complex and the more valuable a solution is, the longer you need to somewhat sort of in some way stretch the sell cycle. You're not really stretching it. Maybe in your own mind you are, because buyers take as long as they. But this is always what I stress is don't hurry, because by the more you hurry, the less you can have opportunities to have situational awareness, and the less you can act on what the situation teaches you. Again, the perfect example of, hey, you do a discovery call, you're like, look, I think there's a few things we missed, or during the discovery call, you mentioned someone else in your group. Can we get that person?
Yeah.
And again, these are real life examples. And I'll just tell you one thing here, Brian. In my current company, I never dictate to my reps. So after about 6 months here, we sort of got a lot of our reps and our solution consultants, sort of pre-sales, got together, and we said, well, how can we make our presentations more impactful? Right? You come and present, people say, oh, thank you very much. We'll call you. Don't call us. And my reps themselves, instead of me telling them, they reached a conclusion that they're hurrying too much. Right? It was like we had a process, which most companies do. You find the lead, you do discovery, you present, and they themselves said, maybe we should have more discovery, or maybe we should have a sort of an architecture session or an architectural whiteboard between the discovery and the demo presentations. They themselves reached that conclusion. And again,
Yeah.
it all goes back to, Brian, what we're saying, sort of slow down the process.
Yeah, it's funny too, because if any of my partners listen to this, they will be laughing, because I chant that mantra all the time. And but there's so much inertia around us as sellers. More and more and more, faster, 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 harder, harder, harder. When you're actually making a proactive decision to slow things down, that is being proactive. That is decision making. And I think where people make the mistake, and I'm hearing you talk about, is if we think more strategically and think of this sale as multiple rounds, we may slow down the first 2, 3 rounds, but the fifth, sixth, seventh round are going to go faster because of what we did there. So there still is an element. I think overall, sometimes when you slow down, the entire process gets shorter. Because does that make sense? The later stages are like, they're a little more greased.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I'm really happy you mentioned this. I think a few minutes ago, I said the word, elongate the sell cycle. And then I caught myself. I'm like, my God, nobody wants to hear this. What is this guy
Right.
talking about? But you make the right point, is that, the customers make a decision when they feel comfortable, and exactly to your point, you hit the nail on the head. If you sort of slow down the process and do more due diligence, understand the situation, take actions, in reality, the total time it would have taken probably even gets lessened, because by the time you get
Exactly.
to the decision makers, the value proposition is laid out, the ROI is laid out, the naysayers have been convinced, you have a greater sense of group dynamics. So you're not going to have someone all of a sudden, get you off track at the last minute. So to your point, in reality, you may actually, you probably end up even shortening
Yeah,
the
well,
sales cycle
uh,
by slowing it down
Amir,
up front. Yeah.
yeah, totally. And that's I mean, if we look at that, whatever we want to call that statement, it's slow down to hurry up. Right. And that's where you and I were aligned when we were chatting the other day. It's still about hurrying up, but it's many times a more effective process. Let's talk about the opposite. I might have a sense of this, but from your perspective, what's your evidence when it's not happening? Like what are the one or two things that you see and go, boom, low situational awareness right here by this rep?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll give you again. I'll give you examples in the last 2 to 3 years. You know, so one of the things I've always done, and not just me, I think a lot of companies do this. We do win loss analysis. When we win something, we analyze why we won it, so we can repeat the process. When we lose something, we sort of always look at what we lost. In fact, in my prior company, we actually used to pay a third party, and many companies do this, to go interview our customers
Yeah.
our prospects, and especially the ones we lost. Hey, why did you not choose this particular vendor? And and I tell you, the answer is rarely. I'll give you one or two examples. There was this. This is a real example. And I tell you, I remember my wins, but I remember my losses too, because it's just like, I can't believe
Yes.
we did that. There was a customer in my prior job. Actually, this is when I was at Workday, and this was it was a prior customer of Workday that had gone somewhere else. So he was our champion. He wanted to buy Workday again. We're like, my God, this is done, right? This is a layup. This is easy. And we go there. We do a quick discovery. I think we kind of hurried up to discovery. We're like, we got a champion. He's going to sort of tell us everything. So we were, in fact, I would say we had opposite of situational awareness. We probably didn't even do the bare minimum because we thought, oh, we got a champion in there. He'll tell us what's happening. And we came up, did a demo, did a second demo, boom, and then very quickly we're like, we get this email from procurement. Well, thank you for your time. We haven't chosen you. We're like, what? We call our champion. Everyone's up in arms, and then the
Yeah.
champion starts telling us, well, sorry, some of my colleagues weren't really sold on you, and then he kind of cut us short as well. Then later, but 3 months later, when this consultant went and did an interview, we realized that we had not applied just the basics of situational awareness. We did not realize that first of all, our champion, he himself was if anything, because people knew he had bought Workday before, he was becoming a Workday user. They were sort of he almost had to be extra careful not to do things in
Yeah.
favor of
Yes.
our company. So in many ways, he actually didn't necessarily help us. He certainly didn't hinder us, but he wasn't helping us. But more importantly, we just didn't understand the group dynamics. We just didn't understand that there were sort of other people that had. In fact, this was that particular deal got lost because Workday sells a complete ERP suite, so human resources, financial management, and one of the pieces is accounting, and it was ultimately the director of accounting that just wasn't happy, and in fact, it was what he wanted was something we could have done, but we didn't
Yeah.
understand how critical he was. And I tell you, an extra half-hour demo just for him,
Yes.
just on the accounting piece of our platform, my goodness, that's why that one hurts so much because,
Yes.
frankly, I think our prospect lost as well because, they got an inferior solution with another vendor. So that's a perfect example of situational awareness in reverse. You're like,
Yeah.
hey, I've got
Yeah.
my champion there. I'm just going to close my eyes, put my blinders on, and barrel ahead.
Yeah, no, it's and all of us have been there on the receiving end of that email from procurement, which is like when you said it, I went back to my PTSD of like getting those, especially when you think shoe in, right? Those are painful. So I appreciate that. So the last question I have for you has to do with improving situational awareness skills for reps. And it sounds like in your organization, you're coaching it. So I get that. But I'm wondering as we're talking through this, like if someone wants to improve their own or somebody else's situational awareness, I mean, in one sense, you've talked a lot about listening skills, but it's more for that. How is there a course? Is there a book? Is there something beyond bringing Amir into your organization and coaching the team? How do you do this?
Yeah, in fact, I good, and I've been, I've been a veteran of many sales trainings. I spent years at IBM, and of course, they were and still are religious about. We used to have to train, even as a manager, once a year.
Yes.
So I've been to sort of every kind of sales training, strategic selling and Hyman Miller and this and that.
Yep.
But you know, to be honest with you, I think somebody, maybe it's out there. I think someone should actually put a course on situational awareness, because, as I said,
Yeah.
everybody, the good reps do it to a certain extent, and actually the good sales trainings I've been in, kind of, maybe they don't necessarily call it that, but they teach it. There was one that we took, as I said, while I was at Workday, or it was a company called Adaptive Insights that Workday acquired. We bought this company, and they have this thing called value selling. So I'm kind of
Yeah.
giving a pitch for them, and it was all about value selling. But in fact, their whole premise is, and they don't necessarily call it situational awareness, but their whole premise is understanding what drives the different individuals in the organization, right? So
Yeah.
it's not just, what's the business value, but what's also the personal value to the individual stakeholders. So, like I said, there's sort of elements of this as they were in this value selling class. You should
Yeah.
probably look it up if you get a chance.
No,
But
but yeah, what comes to mind for me, Amir, as you're talking through this is, and we've coached billions of dollars of deals and done billions in win loss analysis. So you and I kind of share those skills, and for me, it's like it comes down to, and you were alluding to this. It comes down to, all right, there might be 5 people involved. In fact, today, what is it? It's 6.7 on average is the number
yeah,
of people involved in a buy, but and they all have different things they're looking for. And what we've learned over the years, it's not about all 6.7 people. It's about the one or two who are the thought leaders. They're going to make a difference. And then it gets down to the level of decision criteria. And I think about the compliance story you had earlier. It's like, what are the one or two people? What are the one or two things they're looking for? And I feel like that's a lot of the training that's out there is a wide net. What would it, who are all the people? What are all the criteria? What is the process? But we don't. I often say when we get toward close, the world gets smaller. What are the
mm-hmm.
one or two people and the one or two things? And that's very difficult to do unless you're really aware and you're looking for those things.
Yep. No, you're absolutely right. And then, as you're telling me this, I'm thinking, well, how would you sort of incorporate this in training? As I said, I sort of do it as much as I can. But I always believe in having a systemic process for everything. As I said, good
Yes.
sellers sometimes do things intuitively, and what you realize, they don't even realize it's a process, but they do it all the time. But to teach it to others is to basically have a sort of a systematized, repeatable process. Sort of
Absolutely.
allows you to sort of command the sales conversation. And one of the things that I've asked, I have this. I can even share it with you later, but I've got this sort of, I call it a success plan matrix, or people call it an account plan. But it's the typical, when you go in, who's your champion, who's the budget holder, who's the decision maker,
Right.
who's an influencer, who's a detractor, and that's been around for 30 years, or 40 years. But situational awareness, you have to go a level deeper. Is
Yes.
understand, well, okay, great. What's driving the detractor? What's driving the budget holder? What's the personal win? One of the good things this value selling class did is that it was all about value selling, but underneath it said, what's the personal win and the
Yep.
business win and the organizational context. Because as you know, Brian, a lot of times people make decisions. It's never solely what's good for my business. No, it's always a little bit of what's good for my business, a little bit of what's for my career, a little bit of what's less risky. All those things come to mind, right?
Yes.
And by having good situational awareness, you sort of get to, and this is part of the systemic process. You get to think, okay, every individual that's part of the sales process, what's their personal motivation? What's their personal win? What's their risk tolerance? What are they really afraid of? And I think those, instead of saying, "Oh, this person's an influencer, let's be nice to them. This person's a detractor, let's be mean to them." No, it's just going a little deeper and saying what motivates them, because that's when you can turn your detractors into your into.
Yep. Yeah. You kind of mentioned decision making in there, and I think it's an underserved skill. In effect, and we won't go off on this because we could do a whole other podcast on it, but
Yeah.
that's what we're in the business of doing. We're in the business of enabling the other side to make much better decisions. And that comes down to some of the things we're talking about, which is getting a level deeper down to that level of, who are the key decision makers? What are the key criteria? And then netting out really what matters. So that's what comes out of this for me. Yeah, I appreciate it. Clearly you enjoy this subject, as do I, which is why I wanted to talk to you about this. And you've been super generous with your ideas and your time. So thank you for that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Like I said, this is something I'm passionate about, and hopefully, folks that listen to this podcast, as I said, the good sellers will realize, oh my God, I'm already doing this.
Yeah.
But everyone, whether you're a successful seller or not, I think the more you realize something's important, then you sort of start to do it intuitively and turn it into an actual process.
Yep. I love that. All right. Cool. Thank you again. And I am certain we will be talking. Maybe the next discussion will be on decision making. But thank you so much for your time.
Great, thank you, Brian.